It's time for the final word in sports all across the state. You're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts, Phil Kornblut, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. You've been waiting all day, so join the show now by calling 800-956-7266.
And good evening, everybody, and welcome in to Championship Monday night here on Sports Talk. Clemson and Alabama going to kick it off in about 2 hours at Levi's Stadium in Santa Clara, California. Looking forward to spending the next couple of hours here on Sports Talk talking about the game leading up to kickoff. And then we invite you, as you watch the game on television or perhaps you are listening on radio, however you plan to follow along, include us in your plans. We'll go live on Periscope at 8:15. Will and I will be here watching the game just as you will be, talking about the game just as you would be if you had anybody there with you. But if you are by yourself or want to talk to somebody who actually knows what's going on, you can join us on Periscope by either shooting a tweet at us. We'll open the phone lines as well during the ball game if you want to call in to talk about a particular play, a trend, a scheme, a strategy. Chuck Reedy will join us a couple of times at halftime and postgame to analyze and dissect from a professional football's coaching viewpoint. So we'll have all that for you following the ball game and during the ball game. Here on the program tonight, besides what we have for you, pregame comments from Nick Saban and Dabo Sweeney, Zach Willis will be here with his first and 10 analysis of tonight's ball game. Ryan Leaf, former college standout, former NFL quarterback, broadcaster who's out in Santa Clara. We'll hear from him. David Hood with TigerNet will join us as well from the stadium a little bit after the top of the hour to give us a feel for what's happening there in San Francisco, Santa Clara area. The weather, of course, I saw guys' forecast look kind of dicey for today in the San Francisco area. Big storm, heavy winds and all that stuff blowing in off the Pacific. Are they going to have any issues like that?
Doesn't look like it, Corn, and it looks like it's sunshine right now. The rain at least has stayed away. Doesn't look like there's going to be any precipitation around game time. They might have some humidity in the forecast there. The temperature right now in the middle 60s and might get down to the middle 50s by the end of the contest, but doesn't look like there's going to be any rain. They did have a lot of rain in the area over the course of the week. This is the first time in about 5 days that they saw the sun out in Northern California, and it is a brand new field, very similar to what South Carolina had to deal with their game earlier this season after the concert that took place with Beyonce and Jay-Z. They put a brand new field in there. They did something similar here with Santa Clara, and according to the college football playoff folks, that is still standard protocol for them as they do that. It's about 24 inches deep when it comes to the field itself, but we'll see if the footing is an issue this week because of the fact that they are playing on a brand new field.
I tell you what, both teams have two new coaches they've hired just for this football game. It's called a win coach. because when you're in San Francisco and you talk about the weather being dicey, it's always dicey in San Francisco. And I think with these two teams that, for Alabama, it's a new thing, the forward pass deal. It'd be interesting to see how that wind goes and how much they study this wind before they start, who gets the kickoff and what goal they want to defend.
They're further inland than Candlestick Park used to be, so it's not necessarily as big of a factor coming off the San Francisco Bay. They say the winds will be between 6 to 8 miles an hour, so I don't know if that'll be as much of a factor. But again, the footing is what I'll be looking for.
Okay, our phone number, 800-956-7266. So tonight, in between everything else we've got going on for you, we're going to open up the express lanes and take your predictions on the game. Give us an actual score. Don't worry about the spread. Just give us a hard score, winner and loser, and a quick explanation of why you are picking it that particular way. I've given it a lot of thought over the weekend and today, and the way I look at it is I'm going with Clemson 34-30. I see the Tigers getting about 10 possessions in this ball game. I think they're going to score 4 touchdowns, have a couple of field goals in there as well. There'll be some times when they're driving the football, they're going to not knock it in the red zone, have to settle for field goals. I think they'll get 4 touchdowns, and then they're going to just hang on defensively and have enough defense to win this thing 34-30. I think that they're going to have to put some pressure on Tagovailoa. They're going to have to be careful in the back end of their defense with their safeties and not let some of the receivers get behind them. They're going to have to watch the tight end in particular because that's hurt them against Alabama. Watch for the onside kick when you least expect it because that's hurt them against Alabama, and not turn the football over. I think that's their formula for success. I've got the Tigers 34-30.
I have a similar score, but a different result. I have Alabama 38. Clemson 35. I have Clemson covering the number like we had on our show Friday. I just don't feel as confident in Clemson's ability on defense to stop Tua Tagovailoa in the secondary. I also feel like the line of scrimmage is going to be something that, in my mind, plays a big, big factor, especially on the interior. Those 3 linemen inside, the 2 guards, and the center, Falsinelli, I think, are going to have a very, very big task when it comes to playing against this Alabama front. And also, I'm very, very curious to see how the right side of Alabama's line, or at least out of Clemson's line, plays against the left side of Alabama's defensive line, because of the fact that that was a big trouble spot for Kelly Bryant and the Tiger offense a year ago. I think Clemson can still win this football game. I have to see it to believe it. I'm a bit of a doubting Thomas.
Yeah, I have Alabama winning 35-28, only because I feel this Alabama's defense is more of a ball-hawking variety than Clemson is. I think Clemson – see, there are times when Clemson, when you look at them and you see them make a perfect throw, and somehow an Alabama lineman or linebacker gets his hand on the football, tips it, and somebody picks it off. Now, the key to Clemson winning this football game, in my opinion, if I'm Clemson, I'm not worried about turnovers. I'm going to throw it deep. I'm going to throw it often. And if I'm Dabo, I'm saying, hey, this 50-yard bomb I'm throwing is just like a punt. I'm going to take a chance on my big receivers being able to out-muscle Alabama and taking the football, those 50-50 balls.
Arm punts is what you're looking at. You have more? Sorry.
No. I'm just working on something here. So everything you say makes sense. The point is, I think it's anybody's guess who's going to win this ball game. I see 2 really equal teams. I see, great players on both sides, 2 well-coached teams, 2 excellent defenses, 2 excellent offenses. Issues in the special teams area for both in terms of kicking. I mean, neither place kicker is you want to hang your hat on. You saw what happened in Chicago yesterday in the playoff game. My goodness. I was thinking yesterday, what is the worst feeling in sports? Missing a field goal that would have won a game, striking out with the bases loaded in the bottom of the 9th. What's the worst feeling?
Giving up a walk-off homer to lose the World Series.
That would be tough.
Missing a field goal.
That would be tough.
Missing a field goal because you've got 40 behemoths standing on the sideline, been busting their butts the whole game. You trot in with a clean uniform and you brick a field goal.
Not only that, he hit the upright and it hit the crossbar.
If it hits the crossbar and just goes the other direction, it's still good. It falls back on the field. And he's hit it 5 times this year. How many times? He ought to get points for hitting the crossbar.
I wouldn't be surprised by any result tonight, whether it was Alabama blowout, Alabama close, Clemson close. I would be surprised by Clemson rout. That's the only thing I think that would surprise me here tonight. But I really think that these two teams are about as evenly matched as you could find on this level of college football. And again, like we've been talking about over the last couple of weeks, tonight is the argument against expansion. Tonight is the argument against going beyond 4. And these are the two best teams in college football. It's going to be decided on the field, and you will have a true champion tonight.
Well, there is no argument, because they came out and said today, the head of the committee and all this sort of stuff says there's nothing going to happen with the number of teams in the postseason in football until at least 2025.
Mm-hmm.
So you can rest that argument, because it's not going to be heard. It's not going to be considered. And that is that. They've made that was they had a meeting today, and it was covered, and that's what they told the media, and that's the way it's going to be apparently at this particular time. So you just had better get used to it, and probably get used to Alabama and Clemson being right back in there at this time next year.
Clemson has arrived. They are at the building at Levi's Stadium. They got their police escort all
I mean,
the
they
way
decided to show up. They're not so intimidated.
Apparently, he also saw a tumbleweed for the first time in his life.
Heard that. That's the other thing. You know, this is not a case where either side's going to be intimidated. You know, a lot of teams, they see Alabama across the way, they wet their pants. There'll be no pants wetting by Clemson's players, because they're equal bit as confident and cocky as the Alabama players are.
Highly motivated two teams.
Okay, we shall hit your calls in a moment.
This is the place to talk Tigers, Gamecocks, and more. Sports talk across the state on the South Carolina Radio Network.
A reminder to those of you who are just tuning in, 800-956-7266. We have plenty of phone calls to get to, and we'll get all the reaction possible, part of the preamble of Clemson and Alabama. But we also want to let you know we will be on the air during the game, sort of, on our Periscope feed, via Twitter at SportsTalkSC, and also via Facebook at SportsTalkSC. One name, just the same. You'll be able to see both Phil and I reacting to the game as it happens between Alabama and Clemson. We'll be giving you our expert analysis. We'll be giving you an opportunity to call in during the game to share your observations, and also analysis from our own Chuck Reedy at halftime to give you at least a professional perspective on what we will see in tonight's national championship tonight in Santa Clara.
All right, 800-956-7266. Going to open up the express lanes in just a moment to take your phone calls, which, of course, we will take those and go uninterrupted with your thoughts. We've also invited members of our Pick'em panel of experts to call in and give us their quick take on the game. And let's begin with that, with the bad boy of sports radio, not only in this state, but across the entire country. He is Alan Smothers. Alan, how are you?
As per usual, sitting on the porch, having the nightly cocktail and cigar, and no expert analysis here. I'm much more comfortable talking college basketball than college football, but I love the game. And I picked Clemson on the morning show this morning. Can I change my pick?
Why? You've had too much to drink already?
I'm not. No, I would not do that. But I think you guys are a little high. I think the defenses are going to be stout tonight. I think they're going to show up and keep the score lower. I've got Clemson 23-20. And I think they get to Tagovailoa a couple of times, and Trevor is not as able to go deep as he's been able to do that against other people. So I like a lower score, but I'm sticking with Clemson to find a way with a couple of turnovers to win tonight.
The first two times this game has been played, when there's been competent quarterback play, they've both been shootouts. Alan, last year was the only year it wasn't a shootout because neither quarterback could get anything done.
Yeah, you're right, Will. I mean, listen, Deshaun Watson was as good as I've ever seen in the national championship games, both of them, going for 500 yards. But here's my prediction. My prediction is Hunter Renfrow scores the winning touchdown again late in the game and becomes the most beloved Tiger in the history of the football program.
It's already there.
How about that?
And then he comes home and becomes the voice of the SportsTalkSC Braves on the radio and kicks you out of the booth.
A few years in the NFL, hopefully. So, yeah, that would be awesome.
Thank you, Alan. Enjoy your wild turkey back there on the back porch.
And also your whiskey.
Yes. All right, 800-956-7266. Alan Smothers has chimed in. So he sees a lower scoring game. What do you think? As we open up the express lanes here on Sports Talk, we go to Billy in Somerville. Billy, welcome into Sports Talk tonight. How are you?
Hey, Phil.
Go ahead, Billy.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, how you doing, mate?
Hey, Billy, you got us on a speaker?
Can you hear me? Hold on a second.
Not real well. Need to talk into your phone. All right, let's go hit.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, okay. Back away from your phone a little bit. Whatever you're doing is too loud.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's good.
Real quick.
Okay, sorry about that, Phil.
Sorry.
How y'all doing tonight?
Good.
Okay, I got a prediction. I'm going to give you my prediction why. And I've been watching all these teams all year long. And I just think after watching what South Carolina did for a shred in the secondary, and they didn't have a defense against Clemson, but they did give them a prospect on what teams could do. You don't give Nick Saban a month to prepare for a team. I know they've watched some films constantly. If the Tua has a hot hand with that kind of team that Alabama has, I think they won't have any problem tonight. The defense for Alabama has been susceptible. I think if Clemson jumps out them early, then I think that Alabama might have problems. But other than that, I just don't see it. And I think Bama wins, and I think it will win by at least 2 touchdowns. And I just feel like that all year. I mean, I don't see Clemson do what they've done against other teams because, as far as I'm concerned, Clemson's had an easy schedule all year long, and 8 out of 12 teams in the SEC would have an unbeaten season. I'll tell you with them later.
Well, I think Clemson has proven itself to be above all the comments about their schedule. I mean, they're just good.
Yeah.
You just have to give it to them. They're good. They're talented. They're well coached. Their offensive coordinators know what they're doing. Yeah. I mean, Syracuse gave them a bit of a tussle. Texas A&M had them on the ropes. They managed to find a way to win, and they did it really with different quarterbacks. They wanted A&M by putting Kelly Bryant back in the game to save their bacon, and they did it against Syracuse by putting Chase Bryce in the game after Trevor Lawrence went out. He saved their bacon with maybe the play of the year, that fourth down pass completion. So, yeah, they had a couple of scares, and, everybody has a scare here or there. They're just good. I think they match up well with Alabama. I think Alabama matches up well with them. That's why I think it's going to be a down-to-the-wire late fourth quarter game.
I just don't know if it's going to be the defensive battle that our last two callers have said it's going to be. I still think these two offenses are superior.
Key may be who scores last, but who scores last?
Who has the ball last?
Well, with as little amount of time left on the clock as possible.
Right.
You score last with 2 minutes to go like we saw 2 years ago. That's too early.
Right.
Of course, you want to score. You're not going to pass up the opportunity to score.
Now, who are the officials tonight? What conference?
Big Ten.
Big Ten. See, that scares me.
Incompetence?
Yes, because
they weren't good in the one game.
Because
the Orange
the game that was won by Deshaun Watson, Big 12 is used to running over, including pick plays or whatever. The Big Ten lets defensive backs get away with a lot of grabbing. That's what scares me tonight.
Yeah.
They
might need more of that than I think. There's reasons for concern in both secondaries. Pat Surtain II was beaten up quite a bit in their semifinal game.
That's because they allowed push-offs. They were Oklahoma was pushing them off near the end of the game.
Also was Big Ten crew in the Orange Bowl.
Exactly. I'm telling you.
All right, David in Latta, home of champions. Welcome into Sports Talk tonight on National Championship Monday. How are you?
I'm doing good, Phil.
Good, sir. What's your pick tonight?
Well, Phil, I think Clemson is going to win 28-21.
Clemson 28-21. Why do you say that?
Well, I think Clemson's going to have enough offense to outlast Alabama. I think their defense is going to be a little confounded by Trevor Lawrence, and I think our defense is going to have enough speed power to hold off Alabama on their offense.
A little low scoring, don't you think? Don't you think there'll be more offense? That's only 49 points combined. What's the over? 63?
61 and a half.
Yeah, but I think the defenses are going to hold their own pretty much.
Okay. Very good. You got the Tigers by 7. Thank you very much. Appreciate the call. Couple lines now open. If you want to join us, 800-956-7266. Let's, while we wait for more football calls to come in, we'd be remiss if we didn't give a tip of a hat to the South Carolina basketball team, boys and girls. Boys won their game at Florida, surprising, I think, everybody. And, of course, the girls. Is it okay to call them boys and girls? No. You have to call them men and women.
Men and women.
And the girls won both of their SEC games thus far, so they are 2-0 and off to a very good start.
Our friend Lou Bezjak of the State saying that South Carolina State is holding a press conference tomorrow at 3 to discuss the state of the football program. We've been talking about Buddy Pugh's status.
Yeah, I would expect that he's going to be retained. Yeah, nobody's going to. First of all, you don't change coaches here in
this late of the season,
flipping January. No. Quickly back to the phones we go, and it is Mustin in Spo. I know who Mustin's picking. Mustin,
Kapasi,
how are you? How are you?
I am good. How come you're not in San Francisco with all your other friends?
We decided to take a different approach to coverage this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
We wanted to look at it. We wanted to look at it from like where you sit. We've got 2 cases of beer. We've got ribs cooking in the back, and we're going to look at this thing like you would look at it.
Pizza Hut and Pepsi, actually. But.
Hey, and don't forget the fireball. In case
and the fireball.
In case the game gets ugly for some reason.
Hey, real quick, what's your pick? We got about 20 seconds. What's your pick?
It's 42-21 Alabama.
Wow.
No respect for the Tigers, huh?
No, I hate Clemson, so that's the reason. I despise them. I just everything they are, I hate.
But you love their money.
He does. Maybe they'll break some glass if they lose. And they have to call mustard.
The over-under is actually down to about 57 in some places, so it's been bet down. Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network, getting some reaction to our predictions.
I wonder what those are like.
People are mad that I said that Clemson would score 35 points yet be dominated on both lines of scrimmage. That's possible. I think it's going to be hard to run the football. That doesn't mean that they can't throw it. It doesn't mean that Trevor Lawrence might not get sacked. And to be brutally honest, last year, both lines of scrimmage were dominated by Alabama when these two met up.
Yeah. Well, first of all, you're talking about two of the best pass rushing teams in the country.
Right.
They rank among the very best in terms of sacks. So it's going to be a challenge up front for both to protect the quarterback. So now Alabama's only given up 13 sacks all year because he's hard to pin down. Clemson's offense they release so quickly. And I think Clemson's going to speed it up. I think one of the keys for them tonight will be to play speed up, play tempo, make Alabama get up off the ground quickly, line up, try and make them play defensively at a tempo that they're not necessarily used to. I guess Oklahoma did some of that after falling. See, the problem is with Oklahoma, they fell behind. Clemson cannot fall behind, of course. You do not want to fall behind and become one-dimensional against Alabama. I don't think that they will, because I think they're both going to kind of slug it out early on, maybe exchange some early touchdowns, and then I look for Clemson to kind of spread this thing open a little bit in the third, fourth quarter, and maybe just hang on at the end.
And see, Nick Saban is the type of guy who wants to play straightforward. Because even when Clemson would have had their tongues hanging out, he refused to have guys fake injuries and fall down and stop. I would have done it. But remember, Nick Saban didn't do it in that football game. But the key point, you're right, I think the key point Alabama wants to do simplistically is to get Trevor Lawrence off his spot. Don't talk about sacks. Make him move before he throws.
You watched him against Oklahoma. One thing I noticed in looking at some of the video over the last couple of days is the Alabama linebackers would turn their heads and drop back in coverage and lose sight of Murray, the quarterback.
Yes.
And he would come up the line of scrimmage and he would throw over the top of them, or he would take off and run and hit those holes. And so if you cannot forget the fact that Lawrence can run. He is not a statue. He's not stationary whatsoever. In fact, they'll have some called runs, I'm sure, in their game plan, but he is a guy that can take off. You turn your back on him in man coverage and you're running down the field, he'll go take off for 10 or 15 yards.
And he ran a lot more against Notre Dame. From the injury standpoint, when these two teams match up, they're both very healthy relatively. Mark Fields did not play in the Cotton Bowl for Clemson. Christian Miller for Alabama.
Now, continue.
Christian Miller said that in an interview with our good friend Ryan Fowler of 102.9 The Game in Tuscaloosa, he said that he would need to be put in a straitjacket.
Here is the difference
to be able
between
to be taken
the
out.
South Carolina and Clemson media, I think.
What's that?
Well, at the media day earlier this week, you may have heard it from the players or not, but I saw it written up where some of the players were basically saying Mark Fields was faking it. That, I don't have the exact quotes in front of me, but some of the players were asked about why he wasn't playing. And it's like, well, when Mark wants to play, Mark plays, et cetera, et cetera. Like he's some kind of a prima donna, or he's being treated differently, or that sort of thing talked about in Columbia, and it blows the top off the roof.
Yeah.
And so I was a little surprised, and actually I kind of blame ourselves here. We haven't talked about it very much, but that was, to me, a very interesting take on him as an individual and on that situation. What is going on? This guy should be a starter at corner. He is an older guy. He's been in the program now 4 years. He's had some injury issues, but according to his teammates, they made it sound like he's healthy and able to play, but maybe doesn't want to play or is in the doghouse or something.
To be honest, Corn, he's looked less than impressive when he's been on the field this year, and they've looked better without him, to be brutally honest. I mean, that's a brutal truth to tell about the guy, but it's true.
Terrell has come on to be very solid at one corner. The other two freshmen, Goodrich and McDaniel, are getting a lot of run out there as well. And you've got
McMichael. Kyler McMichael.
McMichael, yes. I'm sorry. McMichael. And then you've got, of course, the veterans. That's okay. You've got the veterans in there who, have played a lot of football for them. Mullins and of course, they're pretty solid with those four, but Fields was a guy that they were expecting to be a very good shutdown corner for them, and for whatever reason hasn't worked out for him.
I'm wondering how much Alabama will attack the middle with Muse, and while Tanner Muse is a great run-stuffing safety, he is criminally bad in pass coverage.
That's where they go to the tight end, right down the seam.
Irv Smith.
And whoever's guarding Judy, practice your jersey grab. Kind of right under the table. You want these guys
to cheat.
No. If the referee doesn't call it, it ain't cheat.
All right, our phone number, 800-956-7266. If you want to join us, some lines are open, and we'll get to calls coming up in a moment.
Dabo Swinney and Nick Saban had their final address to the media earlier yesterday in Santa Clara. Here's a little bit of what Dabo Swinney was asked about when he was asked about basically what he takes from Alabama's success to try and implement in his own program.
Yeah, well, I think for me, that's a lot. You're talking about a program that I have a deep love and respect for, always have, always will. And, a coach that's, I mean, he's won 6 national championships, and the level of consistency is a model and an aspiration for every program. And so for me, I think a couple things. One, how he has just been himself, regardless of what people think or say or whatever, he's been himself, and he's stuck to the things that he believes in. And that's a lesson for me, to be myself and to be convicted in my beliefs and how I think that I should run the program. But he's very detailed. We're very detailed in how we do things. And I think from a program standpoint, when he got to Alabama, how he modernized the program, infrastructure-wise, to create an environment, like he said, that's conducive to helping the young players have a great experience and to develop as a person, and a player. And that's, there's resources involved with that, and I think that that's something that Coach Saban changed in college football. I think as a coach, like, we're always studying and trying to learn from every program. That Alabama has certainly been the standard for, a decade or so since he's been there. And so I've learned lots of things. Sometimes it could just be, maybe how he handles a situation. I've called on him a time or two to ask him his opinion on some things, and we've swapped some ideas. So, I'm thankful that I've been able to learn, and again, I learn from everyone, but I think, Alabama has been incredibly consistent. And why is that? Well, they've recruited great players. They've developed those players. They've had a standard in place. And so there's a lot of similarities, yet personality-wise, maybe we're different in how we go about certain things. But at the end of the day, I think it's just being true to who you are.
That's Dabo Swinney. We've already heard from the bad boy. We now have the big kahuna on standby.
Let's hear from the big chicken down in Charleston. It's Bobby Hart and the big kahuna, the king of the airwaves of the Port City, and a member of our expert panel of pickers. And as soon as we hit the button, we'll get Bobby with us. Why is our button not being pushed? I see buttons flashing. Bobby.
There we go.
Hey.
How are y'all?
Good, man. How you doing? Happy National Championship Day. One day before you die, which will be many, many years, we'll have one of these shows with the Gamecocks playing in the National Championship.
I tell everybody I'll probably be watching that game in the Betty Ford Clinic if that ever happens.
Real quick, we got about a minute, Bobby.
I'll be like Shooter in Hoosiers. I'll be jumping up and down in a straitjacket on the bed. But maybe one day we'll get there.
1 minute. What's your pick, Bobby?
I like Alabama. I think it's going to be a close game.
Shock.
I still got to lean toward Alabama. Their receivers and Tua, I just think it's going to be too much. But I do think Clemson's defensive line is going to give Alabama some problems. I think it's going to be a close game. I think Clemson will put up some points as well.
And you got an actual score for us?
Yeah, I think Clemson covers the spread. I think it's going to be something like maybe, I don't know, 30, 38, 35, something like that.
Very close. Bobby, thank you. Thanks for calling in, man.
Okay, man.
Keep the dream alive. The big kahuna down in Charleston. He owns the airwaves before we take over from him every night. Back in a moment.
These guys, they never sleep. Check them out on the web at SportsTalkSC.com. Now, more of Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network.
We're talking about the national championship, Clemson and Alabama. We see on the television right now Trevor Lawrence and his Pantene-inspired locks on the television.
Hey, while it's a national championship opportunity night for Clemson, another team in our state today, if you go by Twitter, and of course, I guess we all now go by what's on Twitter, South Carolina won a national championship today
in
football because Ryan Holinsky arrived on campus today.
Oh.
And so in the minds of the fans who opine on Twitter about him, it's done. A national championship is in the near future for Gamecock football. Not only that, they had their new building open up today. So now they're now in their new home.
Now, LSU thought they had a quarterback, but he did not quite have the chest.
I really hope that Gamecock fans are not festooning the same type of expectations on Holinsky like were put on Lawrence. Again, this is a generational type talent who could be the #1 pick in the NFL draft if he was able to come out tomorrow.
This is a generational talent who was put in the middle of a complete team.
Also, whereas Holinsky is walking into a situation which is still building.
Yes.
Not saying that he can't have talent, not saying he can't break every quarterback record that's ever been at South Carolina. But the fact remains is that he is in a different situation than number 16 is.
All right, 800-956-7266 is the phone number. Taking your predictions on tonight's Natty between Clemson and Alabama. And a reminder, after about a 15-minute little break for some pizza, some cold beverage, and a quick nap, we'll be back at it at 8:15 on Periscope.
We've been getting questions about whether or not there's beer and or alcohol. We are not doing that.
Well, we're not telling you if we're doing it or not. Just we're going to leave that part open.
Well,
it's a long night, and I think there's ways to lubricate yourself.
The point
to stay sharp.
The point being, if I got alcohol, I'd be yelling at Tony Elliott.
Yeah,
about
the selection of verbiage during the
since this is Periscope and this is not like over the air radio.
We're not beholden to the FCC.
I was going to say, can we say whatever is on our mind, just like any fan would?
No, because you're in the Bible Belt. That's why.
Still think we were going to at least hold ourselves to some sort of broadcast
decorum.
Swain and Rock Hill. Let's open up the express lanes here for a couple more minutes. Swain and Rock Hill, welcome in. How are you?
Yes, sir. How you guys doing?
Good, sir.
Where does the rain in Swain fall?
Good.
Mainly on the plane.
Waiting for Well, I'm a lifetime Clemson fan, but probably going to get a lot of phone calls as I hang up. But I'm seeing it 45-27 Alabama, and the reason why is I think Tua's going to come out slinging the ball. They're going to get ahead, and then they're going to open up the stable of running backs and just keep running it, and it's going to be tough to stop.
I'm happy to see that a lot of people, while they have orange and purple colored glasses, they are keeping a realistic expectation about this game. This is
not all of them.
Not all of them. Oh, what you have?
I mean,
well, there's plenty of Clemson fans who believe they're going to romp them, stomp them. I mean, it's true.
Fan is short for fanatic.
I think that we've seen more people be at least somewhat measured with their approach to this game.
All right, 800-956-7266. We'll have some recruiting coming your way in just a couple of minutes, but the express lanes are open on our phone lines here on Sports Talk, which means you can get right through, and we'll stop whatever we are doing. We could be talking to who would we want to be talking to? We could have Dabo Swinney on live from the Clemson locker room right now, listening in to his pregame speech, and we would interrupt it to take your phone call. That's what we would do when the express lanes are open.
We heard from Nick Saban earlier yesterday as well. Of course, both of these teams have two very young and inspiring quarterbacks in Tua Tagovailoa and Trevor Lawrence. He was asked why these quarterbacks are able to succeed more at an early age in college.
Well, there's more and more guys, I think, that come into college programs that we see across the country that are more ready to play. And I think that's a reflection of offense in this day and age has changed a little bit. And these guys that are developing earlier, in that style of play, that's just, more of a spread type offense than rather 20 years ago where you played a little different type, and it's not all about drop back passing. But there is elements of that. But I see a lot of young players that do this in high school now. There's a lot of good development of quarterbacks in a lot of different ways in terms of quarterback coaches. And I just think that the style of play that guys grow up in is a little closer to what you see in college football now, which enables a talented player to make the transition, a little easier. So I would say that's the number one difference. But I see that at all positions. I see more and more guys that are more ready to play earlier in their career. And I think it's an expectation as well that guys are more prepared to do that. There was a time when I coached when freshmen weren't even eligible. So the mindset was never that you would play as a freshman. But now as more and more players do that, I think that enhances their development to help them try to do the things they need to do to be ready to play earlier. But I do think that one of the things that we constantly have to try to instill in our players is they still need to focus on development, not just on expectation. And the guys that are able to do that, improve more quickly and become more ready to play. And I think, Trevor Lawrence in particular has done a phenomenal job for his team this year and his ability to execute, and certainly doesn't play like a freshman or look like a freshman. And if anybody ever watched him, they wouldn't think he was a freshman.
All right, I'm sorry. I got to break in there, Nick. Shut up. We're going back to our phones. See, we break in on anybody when the phones are open, the express lanes are open. Not even Nick Saban. We will break in on Nick Saban.
Or the sound will just run out.
Was he done?
He was done.
Oh.
He was done, yeah, because we be hearing from him right now.
Let's go to where we're going. William in Walterboro. Welcome into Sports Talk. William, how you doing?
I'm doing great, guys. Thanks for taking my call.
Yes, sir.
And looking forward to this game tonight. Of course, I'll probably be asleep by halftime. I'm so happy to have it on the left coast. I mean, it's so ridiculous, but it is what it is.
Mm-hmm. At least they're starting it on the Eastern time schedule, though. It's not like it's the people on the West Coast at 5 o'clock who's going to be like, what the heck is going on out here?
Right. It's not like watching a Dodgers and Braves game.
Right.
At 10:30.
Yeah.
Eastern time.
Mm-hmm.
My prediction, and I'll tell you what I base it on. My prediction is Alabama 38, Clemson 24. And I'm basing that on the fact that we got both quarterbacks are excellent, and nothing against Lawrence, but Tag has been there, Lawrence hasn't, and that's my difference.
Well, Tag, as you like to call him, that's a good way to call him instead of Tua all the time. You can call him Tag. He has only played in terms of the championship game. He's only played one half
and overtime.
Yeah. And overtime. And he threw a pass in overtime that was before that, though, he made a huge freshman mistake. He let himself get sacked when they were down deep. And then he turned around and saved himself by throwing the touchdown pass. All right, Corn, shut up. And let's go to
Bubba.
Bubba M. Pickens. It wouldn't be a Clemson game without Bubba M. Pickens. What up?
Hey, y'all.
Hey.
Look here. I'm a lifetime Clemson fan. All three of my stepmamas were Clemson fans. Both my stepdaddies were Clemson fans. I go way back. I don't miss a Saturday in Clemson standing up there on the hill looking at the games through the fence. But I'm going to tell you, it ain't going to be pretty. They ain't got the schedule, and then they're going to run into a tough team here at the end of the season, and it ain't going to be the same for them. I'll bet you everything. I'll bet you my trailer, except the add-on part, that it's going to be a 3-touchdown game, and Alabama's going to whip them.
What's he betting us?
Everything on his tractor.
I'll bet you my trailer.
Yeah.
I'll bet you my trailer, except the add-on part.
Except the add-on part. Okay. Okay.
By the way, this is Clemson Alabama Part 4. When do we see Ivan Drago? Does that come out now, or when does that happen?
It's a good question. Thank you, Bubba.
So
he thinks I get it.
Yeah, I know.
So he thinks it's Alabama big. We're 1 hour and 2 minutes and 42 seconds away from kickoff.
Could it also be, since it's Part 4, A New Hope, like Star Wars? No?
No.
Could be. Recruiting and more coming up, hour 2.
Round 2 of Sports Talk up next with your hosts Phil Kornblut, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. Don't leave us hanging. Join the show, 800-956-7266.
Okay, we're back at Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. First of the players starting to trickle out onto the field at Levi Stadium in Santa Clara. Special team guys going out there to start their early warm-ups. We're a little over an hour away from kickoff. 800-956-7266 is our number. This note out of the Citadel, Kafari Buffalo, one of the standout defensive backs for the Bulldogs, announced that he is going to transfer for his final year. So he will look for greener pastures and maybe a bigger setting for his last year. Former standout at Lakewood High School. Good player, good cornerback for the Bulldogs.
No pun intended with the Buffalo comment, greener pastures for Buffalo.
You know, I hadn't thought about that, but that would work.
Yeah.
You know.
It's good.
He wants to stampede somewhere else.
Maybe he can go to Colorado.
Let's don't stretch this thing. Yeah, that's right. That would be a good fit for him.
Would be a fantastic
be there with Ralphie.
Buffalo Bulls, too.
And the South Florida Bulls.
There you go. There you go.
All right, 800-956-7266. A couple of quick notes. Recruiting, another phone call or two, and then David Hood from Santa Clara. Final FCS ranking of the year, of course, North Dakota State is your number 1 team, followed by Eastern Washington, South Dakota State, Maine, and Kennesaw State. Wofford checks in at number 13 following their season of 9-4. East Tennessee State also from the SoCon in there at number 22. I mentioned the college football expansion and talk of that from Brett McMurphy today, who was on hand for the meeting of the board of managers of the playoff. Mark Keenum, the chair, he said, quote, as far as expanding the number of teams in the playoff, it's way too soon, much too soon to know if that's even a possibility. He said, quote, it's fair to say the speculation about expansion has outdistanced the reality of what the commissioners and presidents have discussed. And as far as McMurphy's take, he said, if you want an 8-team playoff, you're not going to get one at least until 26 at the earliest. All right, so keep that in mind as we roll forward here with future playoffs. Let me hit recruiting very quickly. Then we got some other things to get to. Checked on safety Jamie Robinson of Leesburg, Georgia today. Of course, USC's been on him strong, hoping to sign him early. He didn't sign early. Took an official USC back in June. Wanted to focus on his season. They won a state championship. Tells us he's going to take an official visit this weekend to Auburn and then one to Tennessee the following weekend. He has also talked about visiting Kentucky. So we shall see what happens there. Cornerback Shiloh Sanders, just back from the Under Armour game, said nothing's changed with his recruiting. USC still leads. He's going to visit Tennessee this weekend. You're not sure when Will Muschamp will make the in-home, not sure when he'll announce. He has also taken officials to USC and Colorado State. USC target, cornerback DeQuantius Watts, has set January 28th for his announcement date. He has officials with USC on the 18th and Oregon on the 24th. Of course, over the weekend, USC target defensive back Chris Steele, Bellflower, California, committed to Florida. Linebacker Lakia Henry of Dodge City Junior College in Kansas, decommitted from Tennessee over the weekend. He's out of Vidalia, Georgia, has family in Columbia. USC was an offer when he committed last spring. Defensive back Akeem Dent of West Palm Beach, Florida, who Clemson had been trying to work here late to see if they could get him in for a visit and a flip. Is going to stay with his Florida State commitment. USC offered 2022 defensive back Dion Bowie of Bainbridge, Georgia. 2020 athlete Jacurius Conley, 6'2", 190 of Jacksonville, North Carolina, has USC in his top 4 after an offer from the Gamecocks with Duke, Virginia Tech, and NC State. But that's not in order. He does like South Carolina, the academics, the program. He primarily plays receiver and safety. He is a stat sheet stuffer. 517 rushing yards, 7 touchdowns, 11 catches, 290 yards, and 3 touchdowns, 1,459 all-purpose yards, 38 yards per kickoff return, 24 yards per punt return, 79 total tackles, and 3 interceptions. And the Clemson women's basketball team over the weekend got a commitment for the 2021 class. Point guard Sydney Standifer of Denton, Texas. She's 5'7", She's not playing this season as she rehabs a torn ACL. There you go, recruiting here on Sports Talk. Check it out on our website, sportstalksc.com, on Twitter. Use the hashtag #STRecruiting.
We now head to Santa Clara, Levi Stadium, where our friend David Hood of TigerNet is standing by, looking at the scenes there between Clemson and Alabama. David, what can you tell us about the atmosphere there so far?
You know what? It's actually pretty loud considering the clock here in front of me says 63.5 minutes until kickoff. But, you know, both Clemson fans, Alabama fans are here early. They're very loud. You probably hear the cheers. That's because Trevor Lawrence just came out of the tunnel in his full uniform. So right now, you know, people keep talking about the stadium is going to be empty and it's not going to be a big crowd. But, you know, the people that are here are pretty loud.
Do you still think that it's going to be a lesser than capacity crowd? What have you noticed as far as the buzz around the stadium? I know you've been there for a while.
Yeah, you know, I think it's going to be a less than capacity crowd. I know a lot of people who were giving their tickets away to local charities, Boys and Girls Club. So I think there's going to be, you know, people in the seats. There's a guy who is a ticket broker who was sitting down here, and he said he thinks it's going to be, you know, 60% and 10% everybody else. I'm looking in the stands, and it's probably more like 60-40 right now. And, you know, the lower bowl is actually starting to fill in pretty good.
Yeah, we can see that on the tube as well. The weather. I know that the forecast out there was calling for some interesting stuff coming in off the ocean. What does it look like as we head towards game time?
You know, it was bright sunshine when we got here. We got here really early today. Now there's a little bit overcast, but I don't think there's really any rain coming. There's a slight breeze. It actually feels good. I mean, to me, it's a perfect night for football.
Well, tell us this about the local media and the locals. Are they even interested in this football game with two teams from the Southeast?
You know, no, not really. There was a guy that I saw downstairs, and he was like, I don't care. I'm just here for a paycheck. And then there was a local Bay Area writer who I was talking to last night, and he was asking me questions, and he was like, well, where's Clemson? What city is it located in? And I said, Clemson. And he said, no, you're not understanding me. Where's it located? And I'm like, it's in Clemson. And he said, no, you're not understanding me. What city? And I'm like, well, it's a little town, and it's named after the university. And he goes, what state? And I said, Georgia. He said, that's what I thought.
Good.
That is good.
Very good.
Hey, what seems to be away from the Clemson beat writers and the Alabama beat writers, what seems to be the feeling out there among maybe the neutral crowd about which way this game's going to go?
It's kind of funny. If you run into the locals who will, you know, they'll ask you about the game. They kind of all say the same thing. We just don't want Alabama to win. I think everybody's kind of, you know, tired of seeing Alabama always winning. You know, Saban could get his 7th tonight. He's the greatest football coach of all, or college football coach of all time. You got to put him right there. But, you know, a lot of the local people, they keep saying that, not necessarily pulling for Clemson, but pulling against Alabama.
So you're saying that Clemson will get the sentimental pick from those who are not wearing orange or crimson in the crowd?
That seems to be what I'm seeing right now.
All right. I know that you and the wife, when you go on these trips, you love to be active outside and to do things like climb mountains in Arizona and things of that nature. What's been the most fun thing you've done in San Francisco?
Well, we went yesterday to the Golden Gate Bridge, and we went to what they call, one of the batteries that you can take pictures. And this is how much fun it was. The wind was flapping at in between 60 and 70 miles an hour.
Ooh.
It was wrath of God rain, and it was absolutely miserable. We did all of our sightseeing from inside the car as the flood came down. So that's about all we've been able to accomplish.
Didn't sail over to Alcatraz, eh?
We could see it through the fog and the gloaming, but that's about it.
Hey, man, enjoy the ball game. We thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you soon back on South Carolina turf.
The sooner the better. I'm ready to get back to my little one.
There you go. He won't be so little by the time you get back.
He's got a brandy new little one, too.
Yeah.
He's been getting big.
David Hood, TigerNet, we thank him for joining us here tonight on Sports Talk.
Still come this hour, Ryan Leaf, former NFL top draft pick. He's at the game as well. But next, First and 10 with Zach Willis as Sports Talk continues, counting down to the national championship.
Sports Talk is the sports talk show of Main Street, South Carolina. From the coast to the mountains, we cover it all.
We will get a little basketball talk here at the end of the hour with Frank Martin, and the Gamecocks basically talking about a fantastic victory over Florida, 71-69, their first SEC game, first SEC victory. I don't know if that's one that many had in the cards, but should be exciting to see Tuesday night. They take on number 14 Mississippi State. Clemson, of course, over the weekend losing at Duke. No surprise there. The Zion show was in full force, and Dickie V was there completely to bow at the throne that was Mr. Williamson. But we'll see how Clemson plays up at Syracuse on Wednesday.
Well, you give the Gamecocks a lot of credit for fighting from behind, 14 points down, a young team, and they did not lose their poise. Their freshmen did not play well for much of that ball game, and actually the veterans came through. Hasse with the great pass after the Gamecocks, got the ball. They called a break because I think the officials totally blew it when they did not call a flagrant one on Hasse when he wrapped his arm around and pulled the guy down. That should have been clearly and I'm surprised Mike White didn't go berserk over that, because that was clearly a flagrant one as the rule is written.
I got to say that somebody had a prayer meeting at halftime, not with the team, but with the officials. How can Chris Silver get 2 quick fouls and was a monster? I mean, playing very physical in the second half, scored 18 points, and I don't think he was whistled with one more foul.
15 turnovers in the first half, just 7 in the second half. They overcome that to win the game.
Can't turn it over like that moving forward, though. Keep in mind, they did beat Florida down there last year, too, I believe. Did they not?
Yes.
All right, let's get a real inside look at what to expect tonight. 1st and 10 with the coach, Zach Willis, with us here on Sports Talk. Coach, thank you. It has come down to this. Clemson versus Alabama. You put a mirror up in front of each. They see the other. I think it's got to be, from your standpoint, X's and O's. Is it a hard game to break down because they appear to be so much alike?
No, not at all, Phil. It comes down to a couple of things. And is it a hard game to predict? Yes. Is it a hard game to break down? I would say definitely not. Alabama, number one, they're the fastest starting team out of the box I've seen in years. I mean, 28-0, I think, over Oklahoma, first quarter, or a little bit over last week, and it just kind of leveled off and played okay, but played incredible early. Clemson is usually a slower starting team. So really early on in this ball game, Clemson has to match Alabama's intensity. And if they're in it at the end of the first half, and they got a real good shot at winning the national championship, in my opinion.
Does the game hinge on a particular player, a particular part of a team, like offensive line, safeties, defensive line? Do you see an area like that where it's going to turn one way or the other?
I think Patrick Surtain, the freshman cornerback from Alabama, is definitely a weak link. Oklahoma exposed him last week. Saban's going to probably try to float a safety over the top to keep him from being exposed. If he doesn't, that could be a big area. And taking the slant away and short inside passing game away from Tua and Alabama is going to be big for Clemson. If they can't stop the slant, it'll be a long night for their defense.
Is it possible that Clemson can still keep this game close if the line of scrimmage disparity shifts as far towards Alabama as I think it will be?
I don't think it's that far. I mean, I think they'll be fine. They've got to play their game. They've got to play within themselves and do well there. Anytime you have a quarterback like Lawrence, a running back like ATN, and the receiving core that they do, you're always in a ball game, okay? Against a team like Alabama, establishing the run early will be a massive advantage. I look for the same kind of approach they've had in the last game against Notre Dame, whose D-line is nowhere near as good. They've got to pound, and stay at it, run a lot of plays like they did the last time they beat Alabama, stay on the field, wear them down, and win in the fourth quarter. That's their approach. Alabama's going to try to knock them out early if they can.
When Freeze was head coach at Mississippi, Alabama entices you to throw deep. And Ole Miss had no problems doing that against Alabama. And quite frankly, was the team in the West that gave Alabama a lot of headaches because they did that. And since this is the championship game, Coach, do you just say, look, we're going to take our shots. I don't care if you get intercepted. It'll be like a punt, but we're going to take some 50-50 balls. T. Higgins, get ready to rebound, buddy, because we're going to throw it high and we're going to throw it deep, and we expect you to come down with it.
I think that's the formula for success. Mike Williams killed them 2 years ago doing that for Clemson, and they've got two guys now that can go up and get the ball, and then they've got a matchup. They have a Hunter Renfro complex. They can't stop him on the underneath stuff, and the two big wideouts, especially the big freshman they got from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. And, you know, T. Higgins could be huge in this game, and I expect Clemson to challenge him over the top. They're going to play their game. You can count on that. Clemson won't back down, I don't think. They're going to go deep, and they're going to try to score as much as they can on Alabama.
It's 1st and 10 with Zach Willis here on Sports Talk. Now, watching Oklahoma and Alabama a little bit, one area Oklahoma struck with success was with the tight end, dragging across the middle, various routes for him. Clemson's best tight end, receiving tight end, is on the sideline or at home, wherever he happens to be, because of the suspension. So, and Clemson is hurt. Back when Jordan Leggett was there, they hurt Alabama with the tight end down the field. Now, they don't have that kind of player, no matter, you know, who's in uniform right now at tight end. But anyway, that part of Clemson's offense missing, is that big?
I don't know, Phil. It could be. I think that Renfro is so good. He's hurt. He's killed them every year, win or lose, because they don't cover inside receivers. Well, Alabama busts a lot of coverages, but they're so athletic, they usually don't get exposed until they play in the elite team. Hunter Renfro exploits that tonight. I think they'll go to him maybe more than usual, or they'll move one of those big kids inside. They've got 8 great receivers they can play, and they can sub in a guy, maybe not a tight end, but a T. Higgins moving into the slot, or one of their other guys, and doing the same thing. And Renfro, again, all-time leading touchdown receptions in playoff history, and most of it against Alabama.
Yeah, in the championship win by Clemson, Renfro had 10 catches, but Leggett had 7 catches. And they had no tight end catches last year in the loss. Of course, they didn't have much offense. They had no tight end catches.
As far as just the way the momentum of this game goes, Zach, who do you think throws the first punch? And if it isn't Clemson, how do they recover from that? And how do you see them trying to recover from that?
Well, I think obviously I would think it's Alabama. If you look at even the season, Alabama started fast and they kind of teetered. Okay, they're still good, but they're not dominating like they were. Clemson has gotten better and better and better and better. I think the first punch is going to be thrown by Alabama. I think Clemson has a counter with a good, solid drive. If they can get a 50-50 ball, that's great. But they need to be able to handle the first punch, because it will come from Alabama if I'm a betting man. They're just a faster starting team. It's their style.
Hey, Clemson, let's face it, when they won the national championship, it was a heavyweight fight, but they made Alabama throw a lot of punches, and just like Ali with the rope-a-dope, they punched themselves out. It took them the last few seconds to do it. So if you're Clemson, are you going fast-paced this game and keep Alabama, try to keep Alabama's defense on the field and tire them out in the fourth quarter?
I think absolutely that's the way you beat them. You freeze did it at Ole Miss. You guys talked about Quan Treadwell used to kill them over the top because they had the speed. Clemson's got several guys that can do that. The other part is the play count, which is what you're talking about, Pro. When you get above 80 plays, if Clemson does more than about 85 plays, they'll win this football game. Because Alabama is known to be a team that's not in great shape. They play to their depth, but for all the credit their strength staff gets, look at the Ohio State loss years ago. They were clearly out of shape in that ball game. And in the Clemson game, they tried to knock Watson out. There were illegal hits galore that were not called in that ball game. And Trevor Lawrence better be ready tonight for the same thing, trying to take people out rather than play 4 quarters. Alabama does and will take shortcuts. Let's not put them up higher than they need to be. They're beatable, and they will resort to anything to win a football game, period.
Zach, thank you, my friend. We'll talk to you tomorrow night on the backside and see how things play out and see what you have to say about what actually occurred. Zach Willis, 1st and 10 here on Sports Talk. Ryan Leaf coming up next.
back, Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network, as the Wonka Champions is happening right now at Levi's Stadium, with Clemson walking towards their end zone and toward its fan base. Alabama on the field as well, as we sit about 45 minutes or so away from the kickoff at Levi's Stadium, which is where we go right now. We're joined by SiriusXM and ESPNU's Ryan Leaf. Of course, Ryan's historic NFL career has now turned to the broadcasting realm and also helping folks out with his fantastic story with his recovery community, and the stuff that he does off the field is just sensational. But he was at the Cotton Bowl to see Clemson against Notre Dame, and now, of course, he's at the National Championship working for the folks at SiriusXM and ESPNU. Ryan, Will Pelagic, Phil Kornbluth, Tom Hayes, how are you today, bud?
We're good. Excited for this thing to kick off.
What were your initial impressions seeing Clemson for the first time in person last Saturday in Dallas?
Yeah, just how big they are. You know, it's really become a game of in the trenches, offensive and defensive line, and they match up identically with Alabama. On media day, if you would have taken the orange numbers and the crimson numbers off the players' jumpsuits, I don't know if you could have told the difference in teams, and that hasn't necessarily been the case over the years.
I know that you've had a long admiration for Clemson's program. I've seen you on TV with the Clemson Tiger Paw on your hat and things of that nature. What is it about this Clemson program that has drawn your admiration?
Well, I think Dabo Swinney. I think that what he means to this program and what he's brought to it, and his character and his faith. I think it's all of that. I think you look for men in your life that you want to emulate, and especially in this new version of life I lead, and you see men and people who have what you want, and that's that, like this peace and serenity in their life, and you go ask them how they got it. And Dabo's been one of those people to me, and it will continue to be so. And I am sure he's that way for a ton of the men he coaches at Clemson.
Well, you know, you discuss the dichotomy of these two teams, and even when you look at the coaches, and you played the game at the highest level, and you played major college football in the Pac-12 with Washington State, you get an affinity to be close with your coaches, and you develop a sixth sense about each other. How can Nick Saban continue to win year after year, and his coaching staff, for the most part, especially his coordinators, is a revolving door?
That's even been more impressive, the fact that he's been able to do that, because Coach Sweeney and the rest of that team, this coaching staff's been in place for a majority of his time there, and you're right, they build that foundation. That's what makes what Nick Saban's doing in Alabama even greater, right? He's able to do this with new, but he brings in a certain type of player. It's almost a certain type of coach, and it's become a little bit of a rehab of sorts for coaches who are struggling a little bit in parts of their lives. They can kind of come back and humble them a little bit, and Nick Saban expects a lot out of them, and then they're good enough to expect to get another job and move on. And all of those coaches have been able to do that. And if you're super successful as a D coordinator or an offensive coordinator under Nick Saban, you're going to get an opportunity. You're going to be on the top of the list of everybody when they're looking for new head coaches out there, and that's usually the case.
Ryan Leaf with us here on Sports Talk from downtown Columbia. So I want to ask you about a little bit more about Alabama and your take on a couple of things from being around them in preparation for tonight's game. I've read some people's take on the offensive line for Alabama. They think it's a bit of a weakness. How do you see that matchup? And number two, have you noticed anything with Tua and the ankle? Does it look like, and I know he made it through the Oklahoma game, this will be a more physical game, I would think, with Clemson's defense. Does it look like he can sustain some hits on the ankle and make it through for 4 quarters? Do you think that could be an issue as the game wears on?
Yeah, I definitely think the game's going to be about what goes on in the trenches, offensive line versus defensive line on both sides of the football, which puts Tua in a precarious situation because of the ankle. But I haven't seen anything in practice or anything warming up on the field here yet to show that there's any indifference in his ankle moving forward. I think he'll be at top speed. I wonder if they're able to get to him in the passing game and he's not as a dual threat. I wonder if we could see something similar to what happened in the SEC championship. I have a sneaky feeling Jalen Hurts may throw his hat in the ring here a little bit.
You and I both.
Yeah, he might have influence on this football game when it's all said and done.
Ryan Leaf, of course, the host of Pac-12 This Morning on SiriusXM Channel 373, hosts from 7 to 10 Pacific time in the mornings there, also does work with the Pac-12 Network, and, of course, is working for SiriusXM's ESPNU channel with our good friend Mark Packer doing some post-game stuff for them, and, of course, is at the National Championship game. When you saw Trevor Lawrence in person for the first time and saw what he's doing as a freshman, what were your thoughts about what he's done, especially with such little experience previously at the collegiate level?
Well, I got a good opportunity to see him earlier in the year, but this was the first time in person. And I think a lot of people around the country, they don't pay too much attention to the ACC unless they have, something invested in it. So what happened last week when the whole nation got to see Trevor Lawrence on national TV, people realized how darn good he is. I mean, he was the #1 recruit in the country, yes, but until somebody actually sees him on a big platform like that, what he was able to do, the poise. Notre Dame didn't do anything different. They've been doing it all year long. They've been playing press, no safety help, and I couldn't believe that they were going to continue to do that they were going to keep playing that kind of defense. And finally, Trevor just said, "Okay, I'm going to take what they're giving me," and he threw over the top of those big wide receivers. And hopefully for them, they'll get similar kind of defense this week, and they can put a lot of onus on Trevor because he's very capable of doing it.
When you're dropping back to throw and those guys are barreling down on you, and especially a guy that young at quarterback, what type of guts does it take to throw the ball and you don't know whether it's going to get there or not? In other words, I'm asking you to throw a guy open. How much guts does that take?
It takes a lot, right? I mean, you were anticipating something to happen. And in this game, you really can't do that because you have no idea. Football is such a crazy sport, but as a quarterback, you have to have the ability to do that. That's trust in your wide receivers, and then faith that you're going to be able to get the ball as far as you needed to get to. Because usually you got a guy flying into your legs or something, you can't get enough on the throw. So that's big for him. The fact that he's such a big, huge athlete and his ability to stay strong in the pocket and throw the football down the football field.
This game tonight is big for a large portion of our fan base, but a also large portion of our fan base is concerned about the quarterback who just arrived in Columbia, South Carolina today, Ryan Hilinski. He and his family making the trek from San Antonio to Irmo, and Ryan will start classes here in the coming days and weeks and start practice with the Gamecock football team. You're very close with that family. What kind of quarterback is South Carolina getting in Ryan Hilinski?
Well, they're getting a young man with a lot of unfortunate life experience. And I don't think there's ever going to be a moment that's too big for him, ever, because what he's had to go through the last year, there's nothing bigger. And for him to come out the other side and be the young man that he is, stay committed to South Carolina and where he wanted to go, be part of the SEC. I've got an opportunity to spend a little time with him, and you guys are getting a special one. And we saw how he plays too. I'm kind of just talking about the personal, the man, Ryan Hilinski. So I think Gamecock fans out there are going to be really impressed with the young man they got. And I know he's really looking forward to it.
Yeah, I mean, he brings so much to the table, obviously, on and off the field. And in our last 45 seconds here with you, from a quarterback's perspective that you have, break him down for us real quick. How long will it take him to establish himself, you think, as the man at South Carolina?
Well, the fact that he's coming to school early, to get a spring ball under his belt, to get in with his teammates, with the strength and conditioning coach, I think that's a huge factor because he'll be much more prepared when the fall starts. And when his number gets called early on, or if it gets called before the season starts, that's the guy you're going to get. I like his ability to fit into what college football has become. He can really throw the football, but he's mobile enough to stand in the RPO offenses of this new college football. And I think he kind of fits the mold of what a lot of guys you see out there that are playing successful football right now, especially in the SEC.
Ryan, I'm proud of you, bro. You've done a lot since the time that I've come to know you, not just as a colleague, but also as a friend. Enjoy the game out there. Give my best to Anna and MacGyver, and enjoy the game tonight.
I will. You guys, too. Enjoy it as well.
Thank you.
Love that guy.
Ryan Leaf with us here on Sports Talk. We appreciate his take and his insight on both the game and Ryan Hilinski as well. Again, though, going to the Ryan Hilinski thing real quick. Everybody cool your heels, because there is a firmly established, entrenched senior quarterback who is not going to be going anywhere anytime soon without a fight and will feel like he is still the man when the season rolls around. Back in a moment.
Now back to Sports Talk, South Carolina's most listened to sports talk show for more than 30 years.
All right, thanks again to Ryan Leaf. What a great interview. What a great individual. You know, he's not the Ryan Leaf that we all used to see in those NFL locker room shots of fighting with players and fighting with media.
It took a fall. I mean, like I said, I've got a personal relationship with him, and, you know, he unfortunately went to prison. I didn't want to get into all that on the air, obviously, but, you know, he partnered with the recovery community now. Now he's out of prison. He helps kids and he helps veterans as well, trying to get people who struggle with addiction and depression. He goes around the country, speaks to colleges and all kinds of people who are struggling with addiction and depression. And he's just a wonderful, wonderful human being who's turned his life around and obviously doing work in our industry now as well.
Yeah. Well, you applaud people like that who
Right.
find a way out, and that's great. All right, so countdown continues. We saw some video of Christian Miller, who is in uniform. He's going to play tonight. 11 minutes, 17 seconds to go until the kick out in Santa Clara. Reminder, join us. Well, if they're going to kick in 11
No,
minutes.
they're kicking at 8:15.
The kick is 8:15. Okay.
They're counting down to the start of their
full
coverage.
broadcast.
Yeah.
Okay, whatever. 8:15, we'll be live on Periscope, hanging out with you for the entirety of the game. At halftime, Chuck Reedy analysis, post-game Chuck Reedy analysis. We will be able to provide you with some statistical updates and things of that nature. So via Twitter and also the Periscope. So we invite you to play along with us here.
I'm guessing a lot of the calls and reaction will come in probably after the fact, whether it's a victory or
Well, I'd
loss.
love to talk to people as things are going on. I'd love to do some, if there's a timeout before a big play is coming up, let's do some first guessing.
Of course.
Let's suggest and what they should do, and we'll see what they actually do.
And if you have a group out there, have a designated caller, because I know if you got a little oil in you,
that's true.
You may want to.
By the way, DJ Uwangalele is there.
Yes.
And he said in a post on Twitter, "Who you got tonight? Retweet for Alabama, like for Clemson." He liked the post, so that could be a fortuitous potential for the 2020 Clemson target.
I find it hard to believe that Uwangalele won't end up at Clemson as things stand now.
Especially with Tua's brother committing there now too. Competing at Alabama, I mean.
Right. And you know who else you're probably going to see there is Nagata's brother, the running back. You have the receiver, Daniel Nagata, and no, Daniel's the running back. Joseph Nagata is a receiver. Yeah, you got him. And Daniel Nagata supposedly is a very good running back. All right, quickly to Frank Martin, who met with the media today. Of course, the Gamecocks beat Florida 71-69. What a comeback. Hassani Gravett, 22 points off the bench. That's big. You can get that kind of production off your bench from an individual. That's big. Chris Silva had 18 points, and he had 5 rebounds. And, of course, he caught the big long pass from Philippe Hasse and threw the dunk down with about 2.5 seconds to go. The Gamecocks pulled out the victory. Here is some of what Frank Martin was asked and responded to at today's presser.
You know, you're always worried about the next play. That's, as a coach, you're not. I don't know. Maybe some coaches do. I can't speak for others. You know, I know what we drew up. I knew what we asked, and you know, Felipe had 2 options on the play. Option A was if Chris, like I explained after the game, option A is if they switch that middle screen between Hassani and Felipe, which is a guard on big. Felipe's read was throw it deep. If he couldn't see it for whatever reason, then try and hit Hassani as close to the half-court line as you could. And now their big is going to be guarding Hassani in the open court. No, we told Hassani you got 3 dribbles or 2 and a pass. And then the last option was if Chris gets behind the defense, throw it. And, you know, like I said during the game, give Felipe credit. He was patient. He didn't just freak out and pass it on the first second he touched the ball. He did exactly what we asked. We asked him to take the ball out of bounds, run to the what would be the right side of the floor, and then sprint the baseline to the left side, and then make the pass that he saw open. And give him credit. He made the read. But as a coach, you see the ball in the air, and you're anxious to see what's going to happen. But once I see Chris dunking the ball, my mindset is 2 things: is next play, and then make sure that no one on our bench is running on the court. That's basically what my brain was telling me. And, you know, and then I wish we didn't have instant replay in that moment. That way they only have 1-5 instead of 2-5. I would have been a lot happier.
Coach, just a quick question off that big play. How different is it if they guard the inbounds? Is there a change to the strategy if Felipe has somebody on him?
I've done it both ways. I mean, you remember Christian Leitner's shot? Patino to this day gets criticized for not putting someone on the ball. But think about this. So if you don't put anyone on the ball, it's a 90-foot court. So then that means the other team has how many on the floor? 4? That means you got how many on defense? 5? I don't know about you, but if I had to fight, I like fighting with 5 against 4 more than 4 against 5. That's just me. We executed. Their guys were there, and we came up with the ball, and they didn't. So if they had 2 guys on Chris Silva, they made the mistake that they both got ahead of him. That's just a mistake. If one stays behind, one stays in front, we might not be sitting here talking to you about what a successful play we ran. Somebody made a mistake. Game's fast. It happens. But, the guy on the ball makes it harder to make a short pass, like a half court. Like the pass to Hassani would have been hard with a 6'10" guy in front. The long pass over the top, that one's irrelevant. That you can put a 7'9" guy in front of the guy with the ball. It's not going to impact him throwing it down the court. So I just wish one day I can retire and have one of them jobs where I can sit back and criticize every banker that makes a decision, every attorney that tries a case and loses. And we live in a funny world these days, man. They're a real good team that's very well coached. It's the #1 defense. Think about what we just did against the #1 defense. That's what the story should be. Shouldn't be Florida's mistake. Should be that South Carolina played the #1 defensive team in the SEC and scored 71 against them. That's what the story should be.
Yes, indeed. Good win for South Carolina. We'll see if they can carry on the effort and the performance. They got to clean up a lot of things. Too many turnovers. Still need to shoot it better. Silva's got to stay out of early foul trouble. And they're going to see a better team tomorrow night at 9 o'clock against Mississippi State.
Well, the key point is, yes, they should shoot better. However, a big key the other night is when they didn't shoot well, they didn't hang their heads. They guarded.
They hang their hat on their defense.
And they had to guard. Now, one thing I will disagree with Frank on this one. If you got a taller guy on him, I don't think he can throw that ball on a rope and at the pace he did when you have to loop it over a guy who may be jumping. And then that gives those guys who are in front a chance to recover. The other dangerous thing, I know men's coaches don't want Corn, is the women's rule. Because Florida would have called timeout. They got 2.5 seconds to go, and they bring the ball to half court.
I want that rule. I'm a big fan of that rule.
All right, here is your officials lineup for tonight. Your referee will be Mike Cannon.
Out of the Big Ten.
Your umpire, Ed Feaster. That
it.
is Tavian's uncle. That could be good for Clemson.
No, it's not.
Your linesman is Trip Sutter.
No.
Throws a good splitter.
No.
Your line judge is Ron
Shooter.
Tipton. That's true. Your back judge is Mike Elliott. Your field judge is Frank Sterator.
Gene, relative of Gene.
You think?
Yes.
Your side judge is John Hayes. That's Woody's nephew. Your center judge is Brent Durbin, and he's also the alternate. These are little things that you can only get on Sports Talk and the kind of stuff you're going to get on the Periscope starting in 18 minutes.
Lots of empty seats. I know they're showing a full crowd, but looking at some of the pictures from people on Twitter, there's a lot of empty seats in Levi's Stadium.
Give it time. Hey, the Tiger fans are there and looks like a orange horde. So they'll be there in their numbers.
I'm wondering if ESPN is doing anything to the picture to try and alter what you see on
Would
TV.
they do that?
Sure,
Nah.
Sure.
Have a great ball game, everybody. Join us on Periscope
and Facebook Live at SportsTalkSC, both ways.
And we'll talk to you tomorrow night as well.